I want to address a couple things. And when I address this, I'm not meaning to be rude. I just want to state the facts, state the obvious. I spent all my early years being extremely tight with money. Most people that knew me would have thought I was broke. I'm a family that has a history of doing that. Let me give you a little insight on that. My great grandmother, which lived to be almost 107 years old, I think just 3-4 days away from 107. So let's just say she's 107. She had money. She had money. People thought she was broke. Oh, her name was Molly. They said, oh, poor old lady up there in that old house on the corner. House was built back during maybe about Civil War time, you know. Oh, that poor old lady up there. They just felt so sorry for her, and they would bring her stuff by there, and really she didn't want a lot of people coming by, you know. And they gossip around that poor old woman, you know. And I had an aunt, my grandmother's sister, that never got married, lived there and stayed with her mama. And she too lived to be ripe old age. I believe it was 97 or 99 that my aunt, my great aunt, lived to be. Pretty much all of them lived to be up in their late 90s, 99, 98. One of them passed away at a young old age of 89, you know. And good genes, good genes. They lived simple. Simple, simple. The whole lot of them did. Many of those siblings, all of my great-grandmother's children, they pretty much all lived a very, very simple life. And get back on about my great-grandmother. Everybody that was outside of the family, not in the family knows. Outside the family don't know. She's wealthy. She didn't care nothing about it. It didn't mean nothing to her. There's a big banking chain near us, and it's spread pretty big these days. And she's an original stockholder of one of the founding stockholders in that. Just amazing. And then there was properties owned and all kinds of stuff, money in the bank, all this. She lived like a hermit. She lived like a hermit. No running water. City water line right in front of the property. City water line right in front of my property. No running water. She's still using a hand-drawn well on the back porch. Look what we're using. Hand pump well at the back door. Getting the picture here? She had an electric well that somebody installed. Somebody that felt sorry for Miss old Molly, a family member. And they went up and bought Miss old Molly a Ruthberry pump to put in, and they put a well in. This was a cousin did this. And put a well in because the way they were living was just too hard. Too hard. And that Ruthberry pump hardly ever got used because you're wasting electricity. This old house had power added in, you know, years and years. This is our old home before electricity came out. So it's one of those, had little insulators on the ceiling, you know, and a little wire running one over and another over on these little insulators across the ceilings of the room. And cord hanging down with a string. You pull the string, turn on the light. You know, there ain't no light switches over on the wall or nothing like that. And had them old clear light bulbs, you know, not frosted or soft white or daylight. It's just a filament and a clear bulb, and you pulled it and you lit up the room. She had a fireplace in that old house, old brick fireplace. That old home had a couple of them. You know how they would do. They'd they'd make a chimney, and they'd kind of go off and have a couple of others, you know. You'd have a fireplace and maybe a couple places that pop in with that from another room for a wood stove. Well, in the living room, the old chimney and all that, or the fireplace, the firebox, they start feeling like it might be a little dangerous. So they had an old cast iron wood stove in the living room. And they heated that old house with firewood. And this, I'm not talking about in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, all that time. I'm talking about modern times. You know, houses are already running central heat and air and gas stoves and gas heaters and you know, air conditioning everywhere and all that. And it's done been around for decades at this point. And no, we're just going to use our old wood stove. And in the kitchen, my great aunt was also still using a wood stove to cook with in the kitchen. And this is a pretty big old house. And you know, them old homes from years ago, when a big family come in, they built a big 2-story house, you know, beautiful old wood home. And they finally did, my great aunt finally did start using a gas stove in the kitchen. Yeah, finally broke down using that gas stove, but not always. Still, if she could, especially during winter time, she'd have the wood stove going. Summertime, she'd use the gas burner because it'd get really hot in there. But they lived basic, grew a garden, had pecan trees all around the house. A simple life. But did they have to live like that? No. My great aunt and an elder cousin of mine that also lived the exact same way. They bought an old Impala. Bought an old Chevy Impala. Now when I say old, it was brand new at the time. Brand spanking new. But it's old when you look back at it now. It's a classic car. It'd be worth a bunch of money. That car barely ever seen the road. It would have had probably no more than a few thousand, if not just a few hundred miles on it when it was hauled away with a wrecker, rusted up and just abandoned in the yard. Yeah. Seat covers still a lot brand new. Of course, they had put the plastic on them. And original seats, the cloth had never even been set on. But the car was never drove. It was a waste of money. They didn't have a want or desire to just run around everywhere. Now, am I saying they lived the right life? I don't know. They were happy. They lived their life, lived a very old life. But this is the way that they lived. They kept their life simple. And with simplicity meant less stress. And less stress can give you a longer life. I don't think they could have made it in today's world to the old age that they did just not too long ago, because now the laws want to tell you you can't live like that. And that's how this story ended for them. Of course, Molly, my great grandmother, she passed away just a ripe old age. But her daughter, Josie was her name, Josie continued living in that old house just like her mama. She's up there alone. Family stopped by and visit her. And she's funny who she'd open the door for. A lot of people she wouldn't open the door for them. So she had to pretty much know exactly who you are. And there's a lot of bleeding hearts stop. Oh, same thing as my great grandmother. Oh, that poor old woman. They'd have to bring her some food. And are you okay? Do you have water? All that. Well, people just start getting too nosy. And I had a family member also that had this bleeding heart, and I had a motive to get it condemned that it was unsafe for her to live in that home alone. And They forcefully turned off her power. She didn't give a darn. Electricity didn't mean nothing to my great aunt. Turn off the power. I don't care. Just get out of my blank house. She's a Christian woman, but she'd get roused up. And they finally got this, I guess it'd be like custody done. That this niece got her declared that she needed that as a guardian on her, got some power of attorneys, and had her forcefully removed out of her home and sent her to a nursing home. Put her in a nursing home off in a town not nearby, far away where she didn't know nobody, out of the way for anybody to come visit her, and even had somehow or another got it where nobody could visit her. Put it like that she was dangerous to herself and like that. I don't have it all down just right. And pretty much I believe that was correct. And they had her, so then she was locked up, almost kind of like a psych ward, but it's not a mental hospital, it's a nursing home, but like, you know, for people with Alzheimer's and stuff that may go wander away. And you had to be on this list to visit with her, and nobody was on the list to visit with her but that niece. And meanwhile, that niece is just wiping everything out, and all the rest of the family is left in the dust. So it turned into a huge nightmare. And ultimately the nursing home's what took her out. They told her she wasn't allowed to walk, that she had to be in a wheelchair. Now, she didn't have to be in a wheelchair. They were forcing her in a wheelchair. And when she didn't want to be in it and just want to get up and walk on her own like she always does, this woman was still out growing a garden now. Let me tell you, when they come grabbed her up, she was still, hey kiddos, she was still a very active person. It wasn't like she was laid up in there and sick inside and they had to remove her. It's a person that was still throwing on her boots or shoes and outside working around outdoors and busy. It's so common now, so common. So they got, you know, social welfare involved and all that. It was a bunch of BS. It was just so somebody could grab something up. She was fighting with them. She didn't want to be in that wheelchair. And the people working there at the nursing home, some of those workers can be pretty brutal. They can be extremely heartless and brutal. And they were forcing her into that chair, and she's fighting with them. And she fell down while they were struggling with her and broke her hip. And she never could recover over that broken hip. At her age, you know, that can be the one right there. And it was. And it ended her. And you know, the fact is, if they just left her alone in her home, where her mother got to live to be 107, where she was just a few years behind that, and maybe could have lived longer, who knows, because she was still active. She could have just died happy in her home the way she liked to live. Now, I know I'm telling you a long story here. I hope some of you appreciate this story, because I have some smart asses out there that say didn't know this was a chat channel, thought it was a build channel. This is a life channel. I won't tolerate that kind of attitude. My channel, yeah, my channel, and it builds part of it, but life lessons and the life channel is part of it too. So where's your freedom at anymore? Where's your freedom? You know, when you're told how you're going to live your life. And this is what happens in the U.S. so much. Going back to her and her life, you know, family just come out of the woodwork then, and my father and some others, they had to get attorneys. They got attorneys while she's still in a nursing home, got her freed up to see her. Court battle began. My aunt never seen the court battle come to an end because what happened in the nursing home, but it went on, and it was just like family divided over money and everybody fighting for a coin from Aunt Josie. And fact is, the person that originally made off with it got a big chunk of it and got a huge judgment against her, huge judgment, and she ended up in trouble with IRS, not paying, you know, on all that, and that you swap it, you still got to pay for it. Still got to pay Caesar what Caesar's due, you know. And all they end up with a massive judgment on her, you know. And then that everybody got, just by the time it was divided up amongst so many heirs, and then the lawyers, my God, the lawyers and the state and everything said and done, didn't hardly nobody getting nothing. So if y'all think, oh, James inherited a whole bunch of money, no. Even like my dad's part was shared against his brothers, and they were gone, his nieces and nephews, but there was such a huge family and there were so many heirs. It was a massive amount of heirs. Now I'm telling you, a massive amount of heirs. So y'all can get your little minds clear right now. James didn't inherit no massive fortune of money, because of the moral of the story. If she would have just been left alone and let her live her life the way she wanted to, and her will would have been honored the way she wanted it to, and the family legacy could have been carried on, and then it would have been worth something, because it would have been ate up with lawyers and state and fraud and all these things that went on. It was a big old mess. But because our life, we're told now how we're going to live and where we're going to live, and I'm going to tell you if you're healthy enough or not. That's what happened to her. This is where we're heading. I'm building this. This is like a legacy home. This is like my great grandmother's house that was built in the mid 1800s. Through World War I, World War II, Vietnam Wars, all these others, it continued on for so long in the family. It saw so many generations. It was unreal. It was a legacy home. And over here, where my wife is at, the family is still, because they kind of run behind in this country, the families are still like the families were long ago in the U.S. It's for them, it's still okay to pump water with a hand pump. It's okay to use a bucket to draw water out of the well. We have a solar pump, and we have electricity coming from solar to be grid free. In the U.S., if I was in a subdivision, in the U.S., I'm in a subdivision in the Philippines, different rules. It sounds the same, but nobody really truly enforces stuff hard here. I'd be told I couldn't have those solar panels. I'd be told that I could not connect in the U.S. to the sewage unless I bought water from them, and you would be kicked out of your home. And this happens in the U.S. all the time. You have to have water from the municipalities, from the mains, in order to live in your home in the U.S. You have to pay them. Not everywhere, but in many, many places. Either a subdivision adopts those rules, or a municipality adopts those rules, or a state adopts those rules. And so you're told in the country that we are raised up in, that we are the freest nation in the world. Who told you that? Who told you that? You're told that you can't live in your home unless you're connected to the utilities, unless you're connected to the power company, unless you're connected to the water company. And don't drain nothing in our sewer. I get that. Don't drain nothing in your sewer, because if you didn't buy our water, don't discharge back, because we got to treat it. I get that. But then they're told, but you can't have a septic system either. Where's the freedom left? And they're going to find a way. They're going to tax you to death. All these subdivisions to rule everything you do. To rule everything you do. So remember, if you buy and support that life in the U.S., you will never live free. You will live in the system. In my blood, we choose to live free. I had I had other family members that was the exact same way. So this isn't just a one-off with my grandmother and my aunt. Many of her siblings were exactly the same way. I'm talking about my aunt's siblings. My dad felt sorry for my grandmother and my granddad. He thought they were poor. No, they weren't rich. They weren't rich, but they got by. They weren't rich. They didn't have no big, massive amount of money in a bank or nothing up on their end of time. But my dad thought all these years, while he was being semi-successful and hit some licks every once in a while, that he needed to help his parents, and that's admirable. There's nothing wrong with that. That's admirable. And he would take money to his mom and dad and say, "Mother, you know, here's this and here's this." And he got where he was giving his parents like a regular allowance, you know, and he felt good and he felt proud. He's helping mama, he's helping daddy. But he also was cocky, because then he'd tell his brothers, "I'm helping them and you're not. You know, I'm more entitled than you. I got more say-so than you because I'm supporting them and you're not." And they too lived a pretty small, simple life. And my dad was cocky, you know, and he went out to live big in the world, and now the rest of the family was living small. In the end, my dad seen his mistakes. You know, he loved his parents. He was just trying to do right by them. Fact is, my grandmother, she hardly ever saw a doctor in her entire life. Her or my granddad. I mean, just hardly ever saw one in her entire life. Never been in the hospital. And she's working her garden, ripe old age, old hands all crooked up with arthritis, and come in for the day. I'm there with her, and she talking on the phone to her best friend, lived up the highway, and she had a heart attack. Sitting there on the phone, had a heart attack. Old woman, very old. And my dad was on his way over there, lo and behold, and he come in the door about the time that it happened, and I'm there, and we get her up, and my dad starts doing resuscitation of crime. Boy, I'll never forget the moment. I'm not trying to be sad here. I'm just trying to get, I'm a realist, okay? I tell real deals. And I was there, very etched in my memory because I'm young. Say young, I'm probably 13 or so, you know. And nevertheless, they get an ambulance there. They get her to a hospital. And she's living. And family gathered up, and she's in the ICU and all. She's conscious, and she wants to see my dad. My dad comes in there and she says, "I need you to go get my big black purse." She had this real shiny, I could draw a picture of it, remember it so well. Isn't it funny how vivid some thoughts can be? And she wanted that purse, and my dad gets that purse. Now, he didn't nose through it or nothing like that. He had deep respect for his mama. Good woman. A lot of my life values came from my grandmother and my great grandmother, a lot of family members. And she pulls out a wad of cash that could choke a mule. That's the Texan in me right there. Hear that? She pulls out a wad of cash that could choke a mule, as we say there in the back home. And he says, "Mama, what is this?" And she called him Sonny. She said, "Sonny, that's all that money that you gave to me and your daddy." And he said, "What?" She said, "We never needed your money, son. We never needed your money." It's a true story. This ain't no made up from TV bullshit. It's a true story now. And she said, "We didn't ever need your money, son. We just saw how proud that it made you to give us that money, that we couldn't take that away from you by telling you no. So we decided to save that money for you in case you needed it for a rainy day. So I just been your savings account." Now you talking about humbling a man down. That humbled him down. He realized he'd been a little full of himself, you know. But he had good intentions, had a good heart. So all of a sudden he found he had all that he thought he helped his mama with. He had it all back. My name's James. I have an elder cousin I spoke of a minute ago. His name was Willie James. And they would call him, or William James, and they call him Willie, and they call him Bill, you know, all these names that arrive off that, like they'll call James's Jims or Jimmy's, and I hate that. My name's James. Don't call me Jimmy, and don't call me Jim. That's not my name. I called him Uncle Bill because he was so much older than me. He was as old as my grandparents. How could he be my cousin? That's got to be my uncle. So I called him Uncle Bill, even though he was an elder cousin. And his name was Willie James, and they named me James after Willie James. Nevertheless, he took a liking to me as a kid. And he's who taught me to drive. I learned to drive on 3 on the tree. That's on a column shifter and an old Chevy truck with a straight 6-cylinder engine in it. I was a little bitty. I'd have to dip down below the dash to push the clutch in or hold the brake. Use the clutch pedal to lift you back up in the seat where you can see over the dashboard. The steering wheel looked like it ought to be steering the Titanic, you know, it was so huge. And that's why I learned driving. Of course, it was always a jamming up on the column 3 on the tree, you know. Old mechanism wore out. So you learn young how to get the shifter line back up too. Not just how to drive it, but to get out there underneath the hood and get everything clicked back in the spot so it'd start shifting in harmony again. So he too, he left this world with a massive amount of fortune behind. And everybody fought over it. Same story again. Everybody fought over it. Will got destroyed, you know. And so then it was another fight, another family fight. And hope you learned lessons on that too. So nevertheless, he owned all of this property out in West Texas. Mass amounts over there in that Permian Basin. Oil wells galore. They give him oil money. He just tossed it to the side like it was nothing. He didn't care nothing about it. He become a hobo early on, and he hoboed. He would jump trains back in the days when you could live so free, and he had a whole bunch of hobo friends, and they traveled and lived the life so free, and all that money meant nothing to him. He wasn't able to hobo because he had the money. He was already hoboing before he got all this money. He would hobo around and jump on these trains, and he met friends that they had this regular routine that they're going to do their hobo trip, and they would go and disappear, and he grew out this big old beard and all that, and he'd be a hobo. Fact was, he had land, he had money. He ended up giving part of that land and a house and all to one of his hobo friends for them to go settle down and live a normal life. You can get too focused on money. The money really didn't mean nothing to him. He left this world not even owning a home, but he still had a whole lot of land. And that all got dissolved. Family fight. What the richest was I gained from them is how to live free. How to live free.